I just got back from the Maine trip and I decided this may be a good time to do an overview on the FJ again, as it has been about 9 months and a lot has changed. But first I need to pack up this tent as I was letting it air out today. As you guys seen from last video, I just got back from an amazing trip in the North Maine woods. If you haven't seen that video, click right here. I just posted up a bunch of drone shots from the area. It was just cool drone shots that I liked. And in 1 to 2 weeks after this video, also click here and you'll find a video on the full experience of the North Maine woods. I had a ton of fun making that video and I'm sure you guys will really enjoy it. If you're watching this the moment that this particular video came out, just wait, it'll be out soon. But for this video, I wanted to do an updated build video on the FJ Cruiser. I believe it was in March, I did a video called FJ Cruisers Suck. And in there I talked about why FJ Cruisers are kind of weird and quirky. But if you want to get triggered, watch this video and write in the comments at me, get mad, I don't care. But I really do enjoy FJs and I want to do a little bit of an update for you. But before I dive into that, I wanted to go over how the FJ performed in Maine. And if you don't want to see this section, click down below. I put little chapters in so you can skip right over to the build section. But honestly, I'm going to make this incredibly short. The FJ Cruiser is known for its ability off-road, and it definitely proved that this trip. We did not have to touch recovery gear at all. And yes, you might be saying, okay, well, you could have done more. You're absolutely right. But the route we had picked out, we had some hard stuff that honestly, I was like, man, if we get stuck, this could be pretty bad. Luckily though, the FJ, like I said, was amazing, had no issues at all. The only time I got a little nervous with this thing is we came across this big mud bog. We weren't even on a road. We were about, I want to say 3 or 4 miles out from the nearest road. Our road to our campsite was closed and everything was blocked off. We couldn't get to it. So we came across this big patch of mud, and if you jumped on it, the whole thing would just jiggle. Like, it was held together by like some roots, but it was barely held together at all. And you could see that before it, there was something big that went through it, but it had some nasty, meaty tires on it. And we honestly got a little nervous because, again, we were in the middle of nowhere, haven't seen anybody in probably a few hours. But either way, this thing went through first and it just chugged right through. It didn't spin at all, it went right through. The tires really helped too. It was amazing. But other than that, as far as mechanical issues go, there was zero. Now, technically, there was a slight issue. It doesn't really matter. But on the way home, we noticed the tire pressure light kept blinking on and off all throughout the trip. But what we kind of decided was when we aired down, and we were aired down for, I want to say 2 or 3 days, that the tire sensor probably somehow got smashed or messed up. And we checked all the tires, the pressure's fine, there's no leaks. So it's probably just an issue with the sensor. And honestly, it's not really a big deal. I'm probably not even gonna mess with it. I know my car, I just straight up took my sensors out because they were giving me issues. So that's not a huge deal at all. It doesn't even make me mad. Now, there was one thing that I did break on the FJ right before we left for the trip. It was 20 minutes before we were supposed to leave. I'm gonna show you that later, but I did break a window, and later in the video, I'm gonna explain how I did that when we get to that area of the vehicle. I was a little bit dumb and I broke a window. So I don't have a cool story for that one. I was just being dumb. That's how I broke the window. So it wasn't like a rock hit it or anything. It was me. The only gripe that I had with the FJ, which I've talked about many times, is space. It was very chaotic when packing. Of course, we fit everything in there we needed, but in order to set up camp at night, we had to take basically everything out, as you'll see in the video. And it was just kind of a mess to get the stuff. Now, that did inspire me to start working on the deck for the back, which I've been talking about for a few months. I do want to create a storage deck, so that way everything essential as far as cooking items and clothing, we can store in a little deck with pull-out drawers, and it would make everything much simpler so we can still access that without taking everything out in order to get the bins. Now, the one thing that I was very impressed with was driving, and like I've talked about in videos before, I am not very happy with how the FJ handles, and again, I'm still not incredibly happy, but that's also because I'm comparing it to cars, which I typically drive. As soon as we got off the road on our last day, or I should say second to last day, it was like night and day. You get on the road and it's smooth as butter. And again, we probably drove 24 to 26 hours just on the road over the course of the trip, not even counting off-road. That's just on the road in order to get there and get back. And it performed amazingly. I was super comfortable driving it. And again, once you get to 70 or 75, the steering starts to get a little weird. And no, that is not an alignment issue. This thing was checked out and it's aligned, and it actually feels aligned. It drives straight, it's perfectly fine. The toe in is about perfect. We adjusted it and we like where it's at, but there's just something there that's still, the steering is still a little bit loose. And again, I'm just very picky. If you have one of these things, you probably don't even notice it if you daily drive it. I just get really picky with that sort of stuff. Anyways, that is enough for this section of the video. I just want to kind of recap Maine and talk about how this thing performed. Again, I would give it like a 9 out of 10, maybe an 8 out of 10. It was amazing, no issues at all. But next, let's dive into the front end of the FJ Cruiser. All right, so as you just saw, I just turned on these halo lights, and I'm doing this for a particular reason. Now, I just got here and checked, and I saw that it's fine. But I wanted to start up here with the halo lights. I love these halo lights. A lot of people make fun of them. I'm not gonna say any names, but people who make fun of them because they're weird. But I personally like how they look. Stock FJ lights just don't do it for me. They look clunky. They just don't look good. I don't like the orange side markers. It just kind of looks gross in my opinion. If you like it, I don't care. Cool, glad you like it. But these things, these halo lights, you can get them from a bunch of different companies. I honestly forget which company I got them from and who makes them. But if you search up like FJ Cruiser halo lights, it's one of the first ones to pop up. I just checked the other day. But the one issue I have with them, and I've talked to one other person who's had the same issue, is the halo itself starts to kind of die. And now you can see it's fine, which is weird because yesterday it didn't work. And I'm not saying the halo didn't work, I'm saying that a piece of the halo didn't work. So on this halo light particular, this little corner occasionally dies. It's really weird, I don't understand. And sometimes it just sits there and blinks. But that's the only issue I really have with these halo lights. Otherwise, I love how they look, and I think they look really dope. All right, I'm gonna turn these off real quick. So the next thing, as you can tell, we have an aftermarket bumper. This is a Smittybilt bumper. Again, search up Smittybilt FJ Cruiser bumpers, they'll come right up. Now, my opinion on Smittybilt has changed over the course of the year. When I first got started into modifying the FJ, I was like, oh, Smittybilt, it's a big name, it's gotta be good. And it is good, don't get me wrong, it is not a terrible company. That's not what I'm saying at all. I can just tell there's some quality issues that if you look at other companies, they don't have those issues. The bumper, actually, I do think they did right. This thing has held up very well. There's only like one little pinpoint that's rusting because the powder coat didn't cover it over here, but you wouldn't really notice that at all. I really do like this bumper. The only thing I don't like is down here, they have a little rectangle in this little inlet. And we painted that black because the silver just stood out too much and the silver didn't really match what was going on up front. So again, that's an easy fix, just paint it black. Or you can take it off, either one. But yeah, this bumper is connected directly to the frame. So if you hit something, this bumper it'll take it, it'll be fine. Might screw up your frame if it's something big, but otherwise it should be really good. Now, the one thing that you guys have not seen since the last video is these little D hooks right here, or D rings. They're of course added for, you know, pulling, their toe points. And we had to put a little rubber thing in them because they'd keep banging around and flopping everywhere. So now that they're pretty stiff and they won't really flop into the bumper on dirt roads. So that is one nice addition to this build. The last thing up front would be the Smittybilt winch. Now, I've only had to use this in a situation once. And if you remember, that was in March. I went up to New Hampshire and New York with a friend and didn't have good tires on it, didn't really have the right recovery gear. And I was going up this mountain and I slid into a tree. My back end kind of slid into a tree. Over the course of a few hours, I was trying to pull it out, and I just could not get it, and back end hit the tree. But this winch did help me get out of that situation. If I wouldn't have had this winch, I honestly don't know how I was gonna get out of that situation. And this winch has a 9,500 pound rating, so it'll pull most things that you need to pull, and FJ will be an easy pull for it because FJs are typically on the lighter side, or I should say medium size, compared to like a big full-size truck. And another thing that you probably can't even see right now is there is a rock shield on this thing now. The OEM rock shield was rusted when we got this thing, it was falling apart, so we just took it off and never actually put anything on. And as I said, you probably can't see it, but under here it protects the transmission because the transmission kind of sticks down and that mount is right there. So if you nail that, probably not smart. But the other thing it protects is the AC condenser up here as the metal folds up and kind of protects that from being nailed with any rocks. And one thing I almost forgot about is the fog lights. Now, I don't have much specs on these fog lights. The only thing I know is they are 1100 lumens. They do shine pretty bright and wide, so it's amazing for off-road use or on-road use, whatever you want. Now, the only reason I don't know the specs of it or like who made it is because it came with the bumper and I threw the boxes out and I honestly forget who it was. It wasn't a major brand, but they do really well for what they are. Oh, and finally, the last thing and the most important thing with this FJ, yo, That's all you need to know. Yo, that's how people know what this FJ is. So you should join the Yo gang. Highlight the Yo in your FJ or Tundra or Tacoma, whatever you want, join the gang. All right, and the first thing that I wanted to talk about is right here. These are the tires, the most important part of the vehicle, one of the most important part of the vehicles. What I have here is a Nitto Ridge Grappler. It does amazing in the mud. From what I saw, it is kind of a hybrid between an all-terrain and a mud tire. It's not quite an all-terrain, it's a little bit beefier, but it's a little bit less than a mud tire. And this thing does amazing. I have yet to actually spin them in anything. And there was some mud up in Maine and they did not spin. So these things are amazing. And as far as the rims go, these are Vision rims. They have performed very well. As far as I know, it is not a well-known name, but I was impressed with the quality of these. I was honestly not expecting like the highest quality, but I was expecting just average. But I do actually really think these are high quality rims. But again, I was very impressed with how they are presented and just the quality themselves. As far as the actual lift of this vehicle, because obviously it is lifted, we have a 2-inch lift on the front and back, obviously, and the shocks are running our Bilstein B8s 5100s, and man, those things are smooth as butter. Before these shocks were put in, I'm not even sure what shocks were on it. They were from the previous owner and the labels were worn off. I wasn't sure what they were. They were some sort of Bilstein, but they were worn out and they were old. And you could tell that with new shocks, it just feels a lot better on road. It just takes bumps so smooth. And I definitely think it was well worth it to upgrade the shocks. And behind me, you'll see one of my favorite parts of this vehicle, and that would be the rooftop tent. This is a Smittybilt Overlander Gen 2 XL tent. It says it can fit up to 4 people. That's not really the case. I would say 2, like super comfortably, and 3 is like perfect. And that's probably all you want to fit in that tent. But it's a really comfy tent. The one thing I do say about it is it does take a little bit longer to set up. It's probably around 20 minutes if you're by yourself, 10 to 15 if you're with another person. But if you want to see the full review on this tent, click here and I have a full review up on it and also how to set it up. And I also have right here, which hasn't been on this thing for too long, but this is the Smittybilt 270-degree awning. I do like this awning. There is some issues I have with it and you can see that in this video here. And sorry, I'm pointing you guys like so many videos is because I did go in depth with a lot of this stuff. And this vehicle is not anywhere close to done. I have some plans for it over this winter to make it Overland ready. So I just want to do a quick video. And if you want to get into the details, you can click on these videos and I'll show you a little bit more about these products. But back to the awning, would I bring it with me all the time? No, I wouldn't. Now when we're on long trips, it is nice to have some cover from the rain or sun. We actually did not need it in Maine at all, but I'm sure if it was raining, we would have used it. And it is very big, so you can fit a lot of people under it. And the last thing before I go to the back is right here, this beautiful window decoration. Some nice black gaff tape, and I'll show you in the back how that happened. So before I explain the window, I'm gonna give you some background information on this mount because this is the reason I broke this window. So this is a mount from Refined Cycle and Off-Road. They make a RotoPax mount, which is what I have on here. And this thing performed amazing. So you can see right now I have 2 RotoPax. I have gas and a water RotoPax. But if you watch the video or any of the drone footage, you'll see that I actually had 4 RotoPax on here. I had 2 that were upside down and then 2 that were clicked in up top. And I had a strap around all of them because, as you know, it's only solid here and there's nothing to hold these 2 together. And I didn't want them coming undone, so I just threw a strap around it and it worked actually really well. I was really worried for a while that that would be too much weight for this mount, but this mount took it. Now, would I recommend it? I would say probably not. I probably would not recommend putting 4 RotoPax on this mount. This mount was made for 2, and also you're putting a lot of weight on the door hinge. But what we did is we emptied 2 RotoPax the second day in the North Maine woods, so that way it had the normal weight on it that it was supposed to have. But otherwise, I definitely enjoyed having the RotoPax along. It made it so much easier to carry fuel. Didn't have to have big jerry can mounts, which if you have, they are nice, but on the FJ, it's kind of hard because there's no good place to put them as the door is swinging. It's not like a tailgate where I don't have a gate to put them on. So the window story, this will be a fun one, a little bit embarrassing, but a fun one. So what happened was I had this door open. If I can get it open, here we go. I had this door open because we were loading supplies in for the day as we were about to leave in 20 minutes. And instead of making the wise choice of closing it or making sure we're done packing and closing it, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna rush, I'm gonna tighten this thing. And we got extra bolts for the back because the bolts they sent were kind of short and we didn't feel comfortable with that. So we got longer bolts to put in the back of this mount So let me explain that real quick. So what happens is there's a little bracket here that connects to the bridge, and again, guess what? I made a video on that. You can click that here. But basically there's bolts in the back that tighten this down to the bridge, and I wanted to replace those. I had a little open end socket back here and I was cranking away, putting this together, and I had the thought, I was like, man, I should really close this door because if this slips, this is a fragile window, especially right here, because there's nothing supporting it in the back. One hit and it's done. And you know, instead of being the smart guy that I should be, I decided, you know what? Let's keep cranking. So I kept cranking and boom, open end wrench flew off, hit the window, and it just fractured it everywhere. You could hear it break, you know, like normal windows crackling. So instead of just punching it out, we decided to put tape over it, and that actually worked really well. This is all taped up, and there's like 3 layers of tape on here and some on the inside. And you actually probably wouldn't even notice it. You'd have to look hard, especially from far away. You're not gonna notice that this is not a window, that is actually tape. But I did this for film because we had white tape on it and I didn't like how it looked, so I put some black tape on so that way on film, it didn't look too nasty. But yeah, that is basically the story of how I broke that window, and that's why you'll see a broken window in that video. The last thing, or I should say the second to last thing I want to talk about is this tire here. Of course, full-size tire, not even gonna go into that, but this backup camera. In the original video, I talked about how this camera was cool because no other FJs have a backup camera in the tire, and I was very wrong. I didn't look at it correctly. I was looking online and that's what people were talking about, and I got wrong information somewhere. I don't even remember where, but I was totally wrong about that. This is normal. The only thing different is it's a 3D printed housing for the camera, so it looks pretty dope. It says Toyota, and it's just a really nice way to, you know, present a camera with your tire. But I did want to clarify that because I did speak wrong on that. So yes, this is a common thing, just not the housing. The housing's a little bit different. The last thing I wanted to talk about, which is still the same as the original video, is back here. Let me just close this door here. I have stock tail lights, but instead I painted them black in the areas that it didn't matter. So obviously the lights are still their color, but I didn't like how there's this big red bulge and it just sticks out from the side. I didn't really like that. So put black over it, and I think it looks pretty nice. I do like how it doesn't stand out as much with the black. Overall, like I said, I'm so happy with the FJ. I love how it performs off-road and even on-road, but I still have some plans for it to make it a little bit better for overlanding. Of course, there's a lot I gotta do. Interior is the same as the first video. Not really much has changed in the interior. But anyways, thank you guys for sticking around and watching this video. I just wanna make a super simple video, just kind of going over the build after Maine, as I was very impressed and I thought it was worth making a video about it. Do what you gotta do down below in the comments, the like button, subscribe. You know what? You know what to do. I'm not even gonna tell you, but I will see you in the next one, which you should enjoy, maybe. Anyways, peace.